Okay, can everyone hear me? Let me start with that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let me know if that changes. Welcome, I'm Barbara Zoller-Gringer. Welcome to the Parks Committee this evening. Just a few reminders that if you're a member of the committee, please keep your video on during the meeting. And if you're not speaking, anybody who's here this evening, please keep your audio off. And if you do speak, it would be great to have your video on. If you prefer not to, we understand. As I said, this meeting is being recorded. It's the Parks Committee, and we record it for purposes of public access and archiving in accordance with the New York State Open Meetings Law. We will have an opportunity for people who are not members of the board to speak about issues which may be addressed here tonight. We welcome your participation. You're always welcome to put in questions in the chat. If we don't get to your questions this evening, the district office will try to address them for you. If you or someone you know needs an accommodation in order to participate in this meeting, please let the district office know. We'd appreciate it if that could be 72 hours ahead of time. If not, we understand. So I just want to start the meeting by introducing everybody. And as I said, I'm Barbara Zoller-Gringer, the chair of the committee. I'm going to ask my co-chair, Andrew, to introduce himself next.
Hi, my name is Andrew Lostowetsky. I'm the co-chair.
Okay, Suzanne.
I'm Suzanne Quint. I'm a member of the committee and a member of the board.
Carolyn.
I'm Carolyn Hubbard Commandant-Weary. I'm a member of the committee and of the board.
Benny.
Leonard Leventon, member of the committee.
Sabrina.
Sabrina Lucia Razzi. I'm a member of the committee and a member of the board.
And Jennifer, thank you again for stepping up to the plate.
I'm a member of the committee, Jennifer Melby.
And at least our one half of our secretarial, not secretarial, but minute taker. And we really appreciate that. For some reason, my agenda is not here. I got everything ready last night, but I know the next thing we need to do is approve the agenda. Do I have an approval? A motion to approve it? Andrew, a second?
Suzanne.
Suzanne, anyone opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. Then we turn to the minutes from our last meeting in January. I distributed those the other day. I did not hear from anybody as to any problems with those minutes. Is there anything now that needs to be changed? Okay, I'll assume then that the minutes are approved by acclamation. And then we do have our sort of honorary public member of Richard Morrow, who is here this evening. And I know that he is going to be delighted that our speaker this evening is Nelson Villarrubia. I hope I pronounced your name right, the executive director of Trees New York. And
very excited, and thank you.
And this sounds like such a wonderful organization. Richard always talks about it in glowing terms. I know you train people to take care of trees, you plant trees, you nurture them, and we're really looking forward to what you you have to share with us this evening. Am I right? You're here really for informational purposes at this point in time. You don't need a letter of support from us? Right.
No,
Okay.
it's something we do every winter is we reach out to community boards, parks, committees, reintroduce ourselves, and that way find new partners to do projects for spring and
Okay.
summer.
Well, it's great to have you here. So
Thank
thank
you.
you.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
I just realized why I couldn't find my agenda because it has the wrong date on it. So now it says February 9th. So anyway, so Nelson, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm gonna screen share and start the slideshow. Great. So thank you for the really warm introduction. I'm glad to be here and join you. Again, my name is Nelson. I'm the director of Trees New York. Trees New York was founded in 1976. We're a 45-year-old nonprofit organization at a time where New York was very different, where there wasn't a lot of money for our parks and open spaces or street trees. So a group of activists came together and tree lovers and formed Trees New York. And it was a way, it developed like an incentive program. So with a limited budget that the Parks Department had, an incentive program that they used was if block associations or community groups came together and took Trees New York Citizen Pruner course, this was an area where they prioritized planting trees because they knew that they would get maintained by volunteers. So 45 years later, that's still our signature program. And we're still offering it to this day. We've trained over 13,000 citizen pruners. And so we still hold the course every fall and spring. It's been selling out because we've been having to do limited outings because of the COVID restrictions, but we're hoping that will change soon. The Citizen Pruner course is our only fee for service program. It's $100, but a lot of times we partner with groups or we get funding where we offer scholarships that will reduce the course fee to $15. So that's something we're doing in the Bronx right now. For about 4 years, we did it in Greenpoint, and it was a way to just increase the number of citizen pruners in a geographic area by offering the scholarship, which is a really great way to recruit new citizen pruners. The course is 12 hours, 8 hours is in the classroom, and you learn all about tree biology, tree identification, common problems and solutions to street trees, and then basic tree stewardship, and then of course how to properly prune a street tree. So often you may walk down the street and you see what's called like a hanger, which is a small little limb kind of just dangling down that might have been hit by a truck or pedestrian. Those are the types of things that citizen pruners focus on. So anything within the kind of younger street tree range. And so we also prune trees that obstruct traffic signs, pedestrian or vehicular traffic, or what's called limbing up. So a lot of times a younger street tree, some of the limbs are too low, and maybe when it rains, they're hanging down a little bit. And so we'll prune those limbs so that they're just like kind of raising up the canopy cover. It's a very popular program, something that we can work with you as well in your community board. So a lot of times a constituent may have a problem with a younger street tree, like what I was saying, low hanging limbs. And what we could do is if you can email Trees New York, and we can email then our broader constituency of citizen pruners and say, hey, there's this young street tree that's impeding pedestrian traffic or a broken limb. Is there a citizen pruner out there that can prune this? And oftentimes we'll get somebody that email pretty quickly and can go out there and do it. So there are limitations of what a citizen pruner can do. They have to keep both feet on the ground. We can't go on ladders. But you see here me pruning using a pole saw, which extends my reach another 6 feet. So we can get up there and prune trees. But so it's a great way to engage the community, but also to if to handle like a constituent concern about a street tree as well. And we can help you with that. And feel free if you have questions as I go along, I'm glad to answer them. Another thing that we do to promote the care of trees is what's called street tree stewardship. So it's about maintaining the tree bed and providing the care and nutrients for the tree to survive. So one of the number one reasons that a street tree dies is because of not getting enough water, especially younger trees. It can be a very rainy spring and summer like it was last year, but soil can be so compacted that the water and nutrients never really make it down. The soil can become like cement. So what we do is we go out with volunteers and we cultivate the tree bed. So we're loosening up and aerating the soil so that the water can go down. Then we add mulch to the tree bed, so this reduces compaction and it slows the rate of evaporation. So when it does rain, the evaporation is slower, so the tree can hold on to that water as it needs it. It also protects the fine root hairs and the roots from things like compaction, dog waste, dog urine, etc. And it also looks really nice as well. So it kind of an advocacy component, says we're here, we're caring for trees. And when we have funding, we like to plant flowers in tree beds. So people are more likely to water flowers, then they're more likely to water the tree as well. And also as the trees grow, they keep the soil aerated, and they also add, as they break down, add organic matter to the soil and improve the soil. And in the fall, what we like to do is plant a lot of bulbs as well. So daffodils, tulips, crocus, and we've been doing allium bulbs lately, which attract pollinators. So we could do this with community residents if you ever wanted to organize an event. We did that with the community board in Queens. After I did a meeting with them last winter, they said, hey, let's do something next spring, and we did, and we rounded up some volunteers and cared for some street trees. Another thing that we do is we work with corporate groups. So these are accountants for in this picture, and they're like, hey, we want to volunteer, we want to work in a neighborhood. And so we'll bring them out to a neighborhood and there might not be any residents at this event, but we like to connect with residents and let them know, hey, we're going to be in your neighborhood. And that's why I'm here today too. So like building relationship. And you could say, hey, if you ever have a corporate group, we have this stretch along this street that is really a tough spot for trees. So we invite you to bring corporate volunteers and care for these trees. We like to have that community connection when we go out there. The great thing about the community corporate groups is we get a lot of them, so we can do a lot at once. And usually they donate this for the supplies. That's part of it. So they help us purchase all the mulch and the flowers and the garbage bags, and so we can get a lot done. This is one group. They volunteered for 3 days. It was 60 people, 20 each day. And I think we cared for like 60 trees in East Harlem. And so we removed the bags and bags of litter, weeds, composted the weeds, we mulched, cultivated, and we watered the trees. Trees New York gets a permit every summer. So it's usually from May through October, and we can open up a hydrant and water the trees. Another thing that we do is, of course, we plant trees. Something that we're doing right now is called demonstration street tree plantings. So most times when Parks Department plants a tree, they're going to plant it at 5 in the morning when no one's around because there's less pedestrian traffic and it's just easier to do. But we want to show people what it takes to plant a street tree. It's a process. It's hard. Their trees are heavy. They weigh about 600 pounds, how they get loaded and on a truck and unloaded, how we replace the soils. And so we like to demonstrate the size and scope of what it takes to get a street tree in the ground. This builds an understanding of like the complications and why it takes so long, why it's expensive, the whole process. And it just builds a stronger appreciation for street trees and why they need care, why it's such an investment. It builds appreciation for the Parks Department. It's like, wow, that wasn't as easy as I thought. And so people just builds relationship so they can see it. And we could do this with a school group, with neighbors. In my community in Jackson Heights, we invited some neighbors. And so what they do is they watch the street tree get planted. And then once it's safely put into the pit, they'll backfill, which is add the new soil, do the stakes and tie the tree, remove the burlap around the bottom, add some flowers and water the tree. So they have a part in taking it as well. So this is a new initiative of ours. Usually we did the same way, the Parks Department out there at 5, 6 in the morning and get the tree in the ground. So now every now and then we like to showcase it in a community. And so we, like in the Bronx, we planted 75 street trees this fall. And so we did at least one of them with the community. And then we do some others. So if we get a small planting grant, which is to plant 1 or 2, we're taking this approach now. Another type of tree planting project we have is what's called community tree planting. So on one side, you see a street tree and you see how large it is. On the other side, you see what's a container tree. So these are trees that are grown in containers. So they're moved from a pot each year. So a 3-gallon pot, 5-gallon pot, 10-gallon pot. But you can see here, they're still fairly large. They can be up to 6 feet tall. And the only thing is we can't plant these type of trees on the street. We have to plant them in a school courtyard. So you might have schools in your community district that have like those few yards of grounds or soil that might be a great spot to plant trees. There may be a garden in the back of the school. We'll also plant them on private property with the caveat that they're public facing. So it might be a church that has a beautiful front garden that's going to be front facing, and maybe we'll plant a beautiful cherry tree or a crab apple or a red bud in the front there, so that the community can enjoy it as well. Or in a local park or a community garden. In a community garden, we also plant fruit trees. So these are smaller trees. Sometimes they're multi-stem trees, and they add a nice effect and kind of diversify the environment. And right now we have funding to do that with, especially in schools. So if you know of a school that's interested that may want a tree planting project, that's something that we can do right now as well. We also engage students in tree stewardship. So we'll send an educator out on one of our environmental educators. They do in-class lessons, why trees are important, what is climate change, what is the urban heat island effect, what is stormwater management, and how trees help in absorbing excess stormwater and preventing combined sewer overflows. So these are all lessons that we do in the classroom, and then we like to bring the students outdoors when possible, and they care for their trees around their school or their after school site. So the same thing as the earlier, removing litter and weeds, cultivating, planting flowers, adding mulch, watering, and it's a real popular program. And now that teachers are getting reacclimated to in-school teaching and stuff like that, we've been noticing that the demand for the program has increased again. Pre-COVID, we were doing about 2,500 to 3,000 students a year. So our environmental educator was basically out there hitting up a school every day. And so we're back out there doing that. Another one of our programs is called the Young Urban Forester Internship Program. We hire rising seniors, so they just completed their junior year, and give them their first summer job in urban forestry. It's a paid internship. They receive a stipend of $165 a week. And depending on funding, it runs anywhere from 5 to 7 weeks. We're looking for spaces to do this program. That's one of the biggest challenges, is just finding like a classroom space. So yeah, the majority of the times we're outdoors, but we need to have kind of a hub, an indoor space where we can be to cool down, where we can meet in the mornings to check in, a place to go when it rains. So it's a really great program. We do it every year. It's fully funded for this year. One of the things that I do when I talk to community boards is like, hey, if you'd like this program in your area and you know of a space to do it, we've done it in Greenpoint in the basement of a church or a rec center. And all those places really work out well. We can bring programming like this, hire students within your community district with that in-kind support of space. This year we'd love to do 2 locations and hire a total of 30 students. The biggest, again, impediment is space. The kids go on field trips, they meet some working professionals in the field, seminars. And so it's 175 hours and 90 of those hours are out in the field caring for trees. So they make a really huge visible impact in the community. And they really change over this course of these 7 weeks. They really learn a lot and are really into it. And just lastly, we're also a member of Forest for All, which is a coalition of over 50 nonprofits that are promoting the planting and increase of our canopy. One of our goals is 30 by 35, so have a 30% canopy cover by 2035. This is what we're trying to do, is build a groundswell of support by forming this coalition stronger together. And it is already having a strong impact. So I'd like to introduce you to that as well. I'm not sure if you've heard, there's a new initiative that was announced today that we were a part of, where all the borough presidents, including yours, Borough President Reynoso, said, you know what, we want to plant 1 million more trees. And we want to make a holistic approach where we're talking about jobs, we're talking about tree equity, we're talking about maintenance and stewardship and all those things. So we're excited to be a part of that. I'm on the leadership committee and work on a lot of subgroups. So if there's interest within your community board, I encourage you to look that up and perhaps join in as well. Again, I encourage you to go on our social media. You'll learn a lot more about our programs. And just lastly, I would like to close out, like, if you know of tree planting opportunities in your neighborhood for street trees, one of the ideal things that we look for are empty tree beds in a row, because this reduces our cost. So if you know of a spot in your community board that has 3 or 4 trees within the same block that are empty, those are things that you want to let us know. And those are increase the likelihood that we can take on a project like that. So thank you. Just a quick rundown. I'm glad to answer questions on how we can help you answer your constituent questions or form collaborations.
Well, Nelson, thank you so much for that presentation. I didn't realize there's so much that you do, and you've given us a lot to think about. We have an education committee, and I'm going to contact the chair of that committee and see if there's some way, if she has some suggestions about how perhaps we could do that here in CB2, if there's some place. It sounds like it's got a lot of potential. So I have a couple of questions, but first I'll open it to committee members. If anybody has a question.
Well, I have not really
Sure.
a question, but
Oh.
I do know a place that has 2 or 3 tree beds that are empty right now on Fleet Street, along the side of City Point. I know there's construction going on across the street from there on that, I'm not sure what they call the official name of that really tall high-rise they're building, but there are at least 2 or 3 empty tree beds on the side where City Point is right now.
Fleet Street and City, can you just say that one more time?
It's Fleet Street between Flatbush Avenue and Fulton Street.
Great, thank
They've
you.
been there. Well, right now, they're pretty much a tripping hazard. I can attest to that because I already did trip once there. But they're there and they're waiting for. I've been wondering when they were going to plant in there. So Now I know why. The interest has to be there first from your organization, I guess.
Great. I dropped my email in the comment box too, so if you can shoot me like a reminder of where it is, that would be great.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you.
Andrew, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, maybe I missed something, but Nelson, you don't do street tree planting. It's the Department of Parks that does that?
So yeah, so we do street tree planting sometime. So we'll receive contracts and grants, competitive contracts, and then we receive grant funding as well. One of the differences why we may get a contract and not the city to plant trees is because within the parameters of that contract, there needs to be some type of community engagement component. So that's what makes us different from the Parks Department. So when obviously we don't do things at the scale of the Parks Department, but when we do a street tree planting or any type of project like that, we engage the community. So we'll get input from residents on where they would like to see these trees. We do stewardship events with the community. We'll have them come out to the plantings. So for instance, in the last, I guess, I want to say 5 years, we planted a couple thousand street trees in the Bronx as part of that.
So, just for us and as community board people in the Parks Department, is it more critical for us to tell our board office to tell the Parks Committee that trees need to be planted on such and such an avenue because there's plenty of spots that are open, or should we be telling you?
So I would say both. So if you see if everything should be reported to the Parks Department, because that strengthens their case of community interest in wanting more trees. So that gives them the kind of numerical information to advocate for their budget. So yes. And for us, if you see something like what I was mentioning, like a couple street trees in a row, we may have a grant that is a little cost prohibitive to plant a tree on one block and then go down another block because the logistics drive up the cost. But we may have a grant that'll say, oh, you can plant 5 trees, and if they're in a geographic area that's close by, then we're able to afford to do that and we can do it. So it's a little bit of both, I would say.
Okay, another question with regards to trees, planting street trees. The tree pits were a certain size up to now, and we've all seen that may be insufficient. Is there any big major effort to create larger tree pits,
Yes.
wider? And is that going to be happening every time a new tree is coming in?
Yeah, so every time we plant a street tree, if it's not of the rectangle size that you see, that's the new one size, it's part of our permit that we have to expand the tree pit. So again, another reason why trees are a little more expensive right now than they were in the past, because we have to hire somebody to cut the cement to enlarge the tree pit. So yes, that is a new standard operating procedure, which is enlarging tree pits. So the only time you'll see a square tree bed now is because there's an existing tree in there that's still alive with a square bed. Moving forward, they're all the larger rectangle tree beds.
Can even the ones that are the square ones be enlarged to be the rectangular? Because I think that helps the health of the tree.
Mhm.
We don't
Yeah.
see the roots coming out of the thing and uprooting sidewalks.
Yeah, so that's a great thing. That's another reason to be an advocate for the Parks Department so they can get funding to do that. And some grants that we've worked on and other groups like business improvement districts, they've received funding to enlarge tree beds in their business improvement district mostly. Yeah.
Thank you.
And any other questions from Suzanne?
Yeah, thank you, Nelson. Great presentation. I learned a lot that I didn't know. Just 2 thoughts more than questions, just Barbara and our committee. It might be something to focus on going forward, doing some kind of an audit of the district where trees are needed. That would be something really tangible. I think that the committee could provide in service of the community. I also love the idea. You spoke a little bit, Nelson, about some other community boards doing a tree bed cleanup day.
Yes.
And I love that idea. And just, you know, as a way to get out there and engage interest also with other members of the community who may then become more interested in doing this type of work.
But did you need some funding for that, or did you have, no, you could,
Yeah, we have funding for so for stewardship, and it's within like our regular operating budget, and we get grants and stuff like that. Where we work with corporate groups, we ask them to make a donation so that they can help subsidize that project, and also then some of that money can be used to doing projects where it's cost prohibitive for other neighborhood associations or community groups.
Yeah, if people like that, I'd be interested in other people's thoughts on doing a tree bed cleanup, and if there are certain areas in our district that lend themselves more to it. Like, you know, I'm in Dumbo, and I feel like between Brooklyn Bridge Park and the bid, we don't really have too much need in this immediate area, but I'm sure there's other areas of the district that would really benefit from a tree bed cleanup.
Yeah, if I may, Suzanne,
Yeah.
we definitely need mulching. A lot of the tree beds need mulching. It's not just seeing them there, but they have to be mulched. If we can stop the people from using, having their dogs use it as a, you know, as a bathroom, but the mulching is the most important thing that I think we could think about and get kids. I mean, it's just a great experience.
Yep.
To do that, but we have to really take charge of the trees and the areas around them. I remember the presentations I made about the value of the soil. The soil becomes valuable only if it's mulched and it's aerated and it has it's given new life. So the other thing I just wanted to say, Nelson, I know you didn't mention this, but you know, Trees New York needs funding. It's not just corporates and things, but individuals have to give money. You know, if you have $10 or $15 or $20, every penny helps keep these programs going. I know Nelson and Sam and the other people that work on the at Trees New York are working very hard to make New York a park city. So let's all help. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks.
Aye, Sam's told me that.
anyone else from our committee have a question? I have a question. I'm just wondering, in terms of your relationship with the Parks Department and what you can and can't do. So I get the sense that if you get a call that there's a problem, you can do it. That you don't have to check with the Parks Department first, you just can go ahead and do it. And you mentioned you can't stand on anything. I was just wondering, are there things you can't do that the Parks Department can do, and just how it works, that relationship?
Sure. So when it comes to pruning, we focus on younger street trees mostly. It's really, I wouldn't even say the age of the tree, because certain species could have smaller limbs, like a honey locust, that kind of gets scraggly at the bottom. That's something we can do. So it's really the diameter of the limb that needs to be pruned that makes it whether we can do it or not. So we'll if you get a call from a constituent that needs help, usually the first thing we do is look at it on Google Maps and then determine if it's something we can do or not. The other thing is, and I don't know if this is a problem in your areas, if there's electrical wires overhead. But there's a lot that we can do. And we have a license agreement with the city of New York since our founding to do it. A lot of times too, it can be other things as well. Like Richard was just mentioning, where it's really compacted soil and they need to be aerated and mulched, letting us know things like that. Then the next time we need a spot to do something, we can go out there and do that as well. Sometimes there's been issues too where a community board has called us where the soil level is kind of dropping and the curb is, so it's leaving a space between the soil and the curb that can potentially be a tripping hazard. So we can go in and put some compost down and some mulch. And we've done that in the past as well to help out. So it's dependent within our scope of what we can help, but there's a lot of things that we can help. And also we can mobilize our network of citizen pruners. And we just had that in Sunnyside the other day. It was just one tree that needed to be pruned and 5 people wrote back that they can do it. And so it was a way to help them out.
Yeah. Well, if your members are like Richard, they're very devoted and committed. So,
We appreciate that. Thank you.
right. So now people who are not members of the committee who might have questions. Does anybody have any questions? All right, Taya, do you see any? Because I don't.
I don't see any hands at this time.
Okay. All right, then I think Nelson will thank you, and I hope you come back again. And we're going to, I sense a lot of interest here to see what we could do to get involved with your organization, and obviously listen to Richard. He's here just about every time and gives us reports. So, but now I think we have a greater understanding of what you do and what you're looking for. So you're welcome to stay. If not, you're not obliged to, but we'd love to have you come back again.
Will do. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Don't forget to follow us on social media. And with the original contact, I'll just send a little summary of what we talked about today, so you have it in writing.
Terrific. Okay,
Thank you.
great.
Enjoy your
Thank
evening.
you.
Happy Valentine's Day.
You as well. Okay. So I think at this point, I thought that was a great presentation. I was really interested in what he had to say. And we're up to chairperson's report and then other committee business. I'm trying to think. I don't think I have anything in particular to relate, but I think the chairperson's report kind of segues into the other committee business. Looking at the different community boards, parks committees, and taking a quick look at other community boards in general, I found this very interesting, and I got some potential ideas for moving forward on things, and I'm interested to hear what everybody else has to say. And then at some point, we'll try to put all of this into one master sheet, so to speak, and see if there's what the takeaways are that might impact our committee, either as it stands now, or if we wanted to make some proposals to the board as to what other topics this committee could possibly address itself to. So I want just a couple of quick comments I will make. It seems that dog runs are a big issue throughout the city. And there was at least one I read about that had just been completed. So it might be something, maybe we would invite those people to come in at some point and tell us how they did it. I found one community board that put together a resource guide about the different parks in the area and related topics. I think, you know, the Parks Department has I think a really good website, which has all of that information, but I don't know if anyone, you know, thinks that might be something of value. So I wanted just to go around the table, so to speak, and get some thoughts. Some of my questions would be with, was there anything that stood out to you when you were looking at these different community boards and the Parks Committee in particular? And, you know, some of them don't seem to meet on a regular basis. I called one community board in Staten Island. I haven't heard back from them just to follow up because I couldn't find an agenda. I couldn't find minutes. And I'm just wondering, you know, how frequently they meet. And I also realized, you know, different community boards, even within the framework, operate a bit differently. And the other thing that stood out to me was a lot of committees and community boards start their meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. And which I was very surprised to see. But anyway, so maybe Andrew, would you like to start and tell us, just go over again which, you were in Manhattan, right?
Yes.
Anything that stood out to you or,
Well, one of the things that I kind of noticed is that none of the community boards are identical to each other. Some of them are very hard to find their websites, or some of them are still using old websites. And they're not, maybe we're spoiled a little bit because we worked very hard to get a pretty darn good website, and I think we're pretty well organized. What I did, whether organized or not, or better operating systems in other community boards, one thing I noticed that in a lot of the community boards, at least the ones that I looked at, they were concerned also that have an attachment to the Parks Department or Parks Committee, also to have cultural events affiliated in their scope of operations. Not all of them, but some did, and it usually related to cultural events occurring as events in open spaces, whether they be arts presentation or something else. But a lot of community boards had that in the Parks Committee regalia of what they're going to be looking at. Some also had environment issues that they were looking at, but really not many. The one that had it, really, I realized why they were there or why it wasn't. And that was the one that on the east side of Manhattan had issues with the sanitation department right in their community board. And that was a very testy issue by Randall's Island in that area. So, before we go around and accepting that we want to do this in our community board, I think we should spend a little more time again looking at the community boards that had exactly cultural events attached to their scope in the Parks Department and or environmental. See if that really fits the scope we want to address in our community board and our Parks Committee.
well, I did find an organization that seems to work in tandem with Partnership for Parks and the parks that focuses on cultural events in parks. And if I can find the name of that organization. And I wasn't quite sure if they're sort of independent of Partnership for Parks or really more involved with them, and I'm wondering if there was something that we should look into. Okay, it's not jumping up here.
Ms. Oliver, are you thinking
Yeah.
of City Parks Foundation or New Yorkers for Parks, maybe?
No, I think it's City Parks,
Mhm.
and I'm not sure if they're really independent or really part of, so.
Yeah, I feel like they focus like on Prospect Park and Central Park mostly.
Well, yeah, I do know that they were involved with Prospect Park, but
Yeah.
I was just or maybe it might be interesting to hear, have them come and present to us to hear what they do. And then, see if there's some way, it's just like Commodore Barry has events in the summer. That's certainly one space that you could use programming in a sense. I mean, even beyond the field, there's space there, and some others. So it's just a
Yeah.
thought.
That is interesting, I think, because it does look like their charge is across all 5 boroughs
Yes.
and all parks. But maybe they just haven't really expanded to a lot of other or area parks.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was something to look at. Anything else, Andrew?
No, I just, I felt in looking at least the districts that I was looking at, I felt a commonality between us, not only us as our committee, but also sort of the community board, and something that we could kind of look at and study more. And that was the area around Columbia University, around St. John the Divine and that area and moving from Central Park over to the Hudson River and the parks along the Hudson River, that maybe we could study that and study some of their Parks Committee meetings minutes to give some
Oh.
more commonality to what we both kind of address and study a little bit more. I would like to spend more time going over a few of their minutes to get deeper into what they really do. I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
Well,
You know-
no, yes and no, but I certainly didn't think this was like a one and done project.
No,
I
no,
look at it as
it's,
something ongoing and, you know, really tonight to make a start on it. Because I think there is a lot to be gained by looking at what others do.
I really like the idea that cultural events and parks are kind of a little bit tied together, because usually all the events or the art exhibits that we have happen to occur in parks or open spaces. And that's something that's kind of important for us and could be more. It's not really cultural events and art things that are done. One community board even addresses them like in storefronts. And I don't see where we could have any kind of commonality with that. But art exhibits, exposés in parks is something that we've done before. We see them in our parks. And I just would like to see the commonality that Parks Department will have something to do with cultural events as well.
Well, you know, it's interesting you mentioned that I was on the Upper West Side on Saturday, sort of late in the afternoon, and I passed a building, I think it was around 62nd, 63rd Street. And in the window were singers performing. There was a good sized crowd. And I'm trying to remember the organization, which I knew about. Apparently they do this in different localities. And I thought it was a great idea, especially during COVID, where you didn't want to be up close and personal with singers. You know, they're in the storefront and the people on the street, and it was wonderful. You know, and really it's a great way to bring culture to the different localities. You know, I had never seen that before, and it was great. So, you know, we do have a very culturally rich district, and a lot goes on here. And, you know, they use that space across the street from BAM. There are lots of activities there. It's a green space, you might say. I've heard Betty Levette there, and so there've been drum circles and dancing, and it's really a very well utilized space with a lot of different cultural events. So if you had more of those in a park, it brings people in, and I think once you get people in, then maybe they'll come back. So so some interesting things to think about.
If I may.
Sure, Richard.
Well, I'm working now with the Adams Street Library on a March event dealing with Women's History Month. And it might be of some interest to this committee to see if we could put something together with them in terms of the parks. I know we're Kat and I are dealing with the Emily Roebling, you know, thing. We're calling the project Building Bridges.
I like that.
The first series will be the Emily Roebling lecture series, where we're inviting women from all different areas, arts, science, things to come and give lectures, Zoom and whatever we can do. But it might be an interesting thing for the parks to have some events for young women to be more creative, to be more participatory, to be more aware of the power that they have in terms of developing our culture. For instance, this project has opened my mind. You know, the one thing that got me was, do you know who developed the internet? 6 women in the US Army in the 1940s developed the internet. Hedy Lamarr, with another associate of hers, developed the Wi-Fi. I mean, Hedy Lamarr, who as a kid was a beautiful actress, she was a scientist as well. She developed, she helped, she was partners with the scientists. She was a scientist who developed the Wi-Fi. Who knows this? I didn't know it until we started doing this project. At any rate, it might be an interesting thing for March to see if we can get some activities and events going in the parks, celebrating the history of women. It's a History Women's Month. So there are a lot of, I mean, I speak to a lot of women here in Dumbo who have daughters and things. They're so excited. Yes, my daughter would love that. They want to know who this woman was. Who was the first? Do you know who the first person was who developed DNA? Who drew it was a woman. I didn't know that. I'm not going to tell you who it was. Go find out. You'll see. The first person who developed the DNA structure was a woman. Do we know that? Do we know her name? Is she given a credit? Does she have a star on it? No. So this might be a really good opportunity for this committee to sort of look into this and see what we can do and how maybe work with the park, maybe work with a Cat Savage at the library. She and I are working on this project to get this thing together. But we must wake up. We must wake up. It's just horrific what we don't know. The value and the importance of the woman to our sciences, our arts, our theater. I mean, it's
Rich, I don't want to cut you off, but I'd like to.
I'm gone.
Get back to the topic. Carolyn, I thought I'd ask you next to share some thoughts.
Yes, I found that some of the committees I had Queens. I had 7 boards in Queens, and several of them only didn't meet every month. They met on a as needed basis, and they were connected to environment in some cases. And those that were near the beaches in Queens had a lot of issues around the beaches, and they even got into the issues of parking and traffic.
Wow.
And they also had some issues with dogs, but not greatly. But one community board had a lot of issues with unleashed dogs in their parks. And generally it was parks and recreation and not anything else. I don't have my actual notes in front of me, and I wanted to get them, but I'd have to go off the Zoom in order to get to my notes. So I'll cut myself off. But that's mostly what I remember about them. Nothing remarkable. And also they don't have minutes available online. One board didn't even have an online presence with a website at all. So I don't think, I got most of my information from the reports the Parks Committee made at the general board meeting rather than their own Parks Committee meetings, because they weren't available online. Oh, there we go.
And then when you do that, there isn't that much in the general meeting from the
No.
committees.
Not a great deal.
Yeah. So, all right, that's really good. Jennifer, I think you were also in Queens, right?
I was. I was very frustrated because it was really hard to find information, but most of them, they were all parks, recreation, and cultural. And so there was one in particular in Community Board 7, which is huge. And apparently it's the largest, greenest area in Queens with 64 parks. But they also seem to be very interested in this adopt a park program, similar to sort of Suzanne's friends group with the various parks, and saying how valuable and that they should really promote that kind of thing in their parks to get the friends, the people who use it a lot, to form a group and take some responsibility and interest in it. But they were, and they also mentioned sort of various things about the capital projects, which are kind of things we've talked about, why it takes so long to get things through the process and get them done. But, and yeah, a lot of them were also, I think there was a great emphasis on having cultural and recreation things during the summer months in the parks. But, you know, if I was able to find, some of them had sort of with their statement of needs, I was able to find things that they were concerned about, but yeah, it was sort of similar to what other people have said. But and also that they have I mean, some of the parks seem to have regular meetings, other parks, you know, it's kind of whenever. It was hard even to find a schedule.
Yeah, that's, you know, it's a good idea if one wanted to do a deeper dive to look at statements of needs. So,
but that was only because on this one, I think the Community Board 7, the only thing that was available was all of a sudden I saw a statement of needs. I, oh, wait, clicked on that and that gave me some information, but otherwise, you know, I couldn't find anything out. And apparently like the Community Board 6, where there was no information other than the fact of Jean Silva, I guess, who's quite well known in Queens because she's been committee chairs and whatnot. And but no regular meetings seem to be scheduled. Yeah.
okay, well, thanks for that. Lenny?
Yeah, I think my mic is open.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I found similar things to what the other people have said. That one thing I noticed is many of the boards were, in my opinion, overly ambitious with what they wanted to cover. Environment, sanitation, arts, the whole smorgasbord, I would say. And I think it's
What region did you have,
dragging.
Lenny? What region did you have?
I had Brooklyn 1 through 9.
Okay.
CB1, which is Williamsburg and Greenpoint, seemed to be the most active, the most focused, and stick-to-itiveness, persistent. I'm looking for a different word, but I think you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. Staying on top of things. They're very concerned, rightfully so, and very diligent about keeping their waterfront free of corporate overdevelopment. They want to keep their area over there for the pedestrians, for the people, for the recreation, and for their arts enrichment. And that there's one stretch where they made sure that this developer who was trying to take over was kept in his distance. And I think they are maintaining the fight there. And that's what they're doing. Other districts, they're over ambitious in their goals or their mission statements, and Many of them are not really doing too much when it comes down to it. They're not holding many meetings. And their websites are not, I have to say it, from what I saw, have the best website. And like I already said, CB1 is right behind us with that. And one of them, I think I'll leave them nameless, their idea of minutes, I swear to God, record every word, syllable. Their minutes go on average, I'm not exaggerating, 29 pages.
Oh
I'm
my
getting a
God.
headache trying to cull information that meant something out of it. If you want to find out who they are, okay, it's CB4, but I'm not going to say much more.
Wow.
And yeah, the thing that I really did get out of everything that I found and what was said already by Andrew and the others that are already reported, that I do think the best idea is to combine parks and recreation with culture. Because a lot of the cultural events or would-be or potential events would be taking place mostly in the parks and in the open spaces. Like that space that you were talking about behind, across the street from BAM, behind Whole Foods, actually.
Right, adjacent to
And
that.
I've often thought of, ooh, what can I do with that? I mean, because I'm involved with a couple of different things that I personally do. And it's a great venue for presentations. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think.
I know, I found at least one, it might have been two parks committees that handled requests for park permits, which I thought was kind of strange. So Carolyn, you're on mute, but it sounds like you found that as well. Yeah, so I just, sort of like the liquor licenses from Hess, but
It provides a public hearing for events of a certain size, I guess, right?
I would guess, I didn't look at it that closely, but I mean,
Yeah.
it didn't, I don't, I mean, we don't have that many large, the only real large event that I know about is in Commodore Barry. Although I have a vague recollection that they used to have some sort of events in Kyla Gore that were, yeah,
They
But-
do.
yeah.
Cadman a little bit, and certainly Brooklyn Bridge Park.
Well,
And also-
technically, they're not
Yeah,
part of the
technically,
Parks
right,
Department.
But
right.
it would be nice for the community to have notification of
Yeah.
the very large events they do there.
Or Fort Greene had a few sizable events in the park that required events. I really personally, but this is personal really, would not like to get involved in sitting and listening to applications for permits for
No,
a park
I
event.
agree with you.
Because there's a lot of things that go in there, sanitation, noise, and it would be a disaster. There was a reason why liquor licensing was in Hess committee, and that had a lot to do with outside cafes staying open, the noise elements. But the parks and cultural events in many of the community boards were kind of joined in the hips as far as having events outside, using outdoor spaces. So that's something we should kind of maybe look a little more, maybe go into the detail of those parks committees with cultural events and see if we could read through some of their minutes and see how that's really all handled and flushed out. That would be an interesting thing for us to possibly do in our, Parks Committee here in CB2. And also study which of those CB2s all over in the city are a little bit sort of similar to us, whether in terms of scope or in the work that they do. I know CB3 in Manhattan is a little similar to us. I know the one that's by Columbia University is very much akin to us. and, kind of what they get involved in. And maybe, maybe study how, concentrate on a few of those that are very similar and see if we could bring some commonality to us as well. But, even suggesting cultural events in parks might be a dangerous thing because, maybe we're going to, bite off a little more than we could chew. I'm not sure. But we might want to think about it.
Well,
a little bit seriously.
we did hear from Playground NYC. They came in and we were very supportive of the events they wanted to hold. So we've already kind of put our foot in the water, so to speak, on that sort of thing. And those were great events. I went to both of them and geared for children. So, all right. So Lenny, did you want to say anything else or?
I don't know. Talking about permits though, I know in Brooklyn Bridge Park, they have specific people and I forget their official titles, but they're upper level people that do handle permits and how to go about them. And
Well, again, Brooklyn Bridge Park is not part of the Parks Department, so they're sort of on their own.
yeah, but what I'm getting at is they have their ways of handling permits, like Prospect Park gives permits for their ball fields. And maybe a little bit different than cultural events. But there was a time I was looking into something personal that I was at one time trying to organize at Brooklyn Bridge Park. And I found out that there's a process. The permits really don't cost too much money, but they handle it on their own. And I would assume from how they do it, that Fort Greene Park would have their process and the Parks Department itself has their process of doing it. For us to get into it and to listen and to hear all this, I think would be distracting. To
No, I
go
don't
about it
think-
in general, or to hear people come in and report about what they want to do, a plan, etc., is more in line of what we do and should keep doing and may keep on doing, but not get bogged down in the detailed minutia.
No, I don't think from what else everyone else said, I don't think there's any real interest here in looking at permits. And again, I was surprised that some of these community board committees do. So I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne at this point.
Yeah, I had Lower Manhattan. And they actually, the most common expansion of the Parks Committee was on waterfront and environment. And I take a little bit of maybe a different lens on this. My head is around thinking that the committee should be focused on things that impact the community, where the community needs to be informed, but more importantly, I think also where the community's voice is needed. So I really favor sort of an amplification of environmental and waterfront and resiliency issues. We have a lot of waterfront in our district, and I don't know that we spend too much time talking about that and its impact. And I know we've touched on the subject recently, like environmentally in terms of the surfaces on the parks and not the surfaces, the ground covers, and the fertilizers and all of that. People care about those issues. And I feel like a focus there, and that would fall within the scope of, our current committee. A focus there, I think, would definitely be useful. But I guess in terms of the assignment, it was definitely more with environmental and resiliency issues. There was a little bit of cultural affairs, but more in those on the other. I just also feel like those topics are interesting to younger community members, and it may encourage younger community members to get involved if there was an expansion that went in that direction. And it's just really important, I think, that the community is educated on all of the environmental impact stuff.
Well, I think at some point, the Parks Department is going to come back about Fort Greene vis-a-vis the environmental impact study, or I'm not sure what it's called exactly. That's, being conducted there in relation to the Open Parks Initiative that's going on. So, anything else, Suzanne?
No, I think that's the, nothing major.
Okay, that's great. What I noticed in the Bronx is there were several places that heard from the forestry division of the Parks Department, and that's something we haven't really heard from. Several of them seem to have them on a regular basis. So I thought that might be something we could look into.
They have that huge park there. I can't remember what it's called, but that you can go hiking in. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe that the forestry division is more geared to parks. Richard, just give me 1 minute. And when are you becoming a member of this committee? An official member,
Playing hard to get, I think.
Yes, I think that's it.
I'm exhausted. I'm writing another monograph of the woman of the downtown Brooklyn waterfront. So I'm spending a lot of time reading and researching.
All right.
And then another thing, I noticed one community board had an aging committee. It's something that, again, I think some of these issues are all part of HES, so to speak. And a number of the community boards had the description of what the Parks Committee, the function of it on the website. And it really was basically the same thing as a liaison with the Parks Department and that kind of thing between the park users and the Parks Department. Also, one of these, the street activity permits, then they go to the full board for approval. I mean, we could be there all night with that kind of thing. And then I thought it was interesting that CB11 in the Bronx, that they have a description in their bylaws about each committee. We have, I think there's a description of one thing in the bylaws. I might be wrong, but there has been discussion about the possibility of looking at our bylaws. And so these are things that would come up. And then I thought this was very interesting about the porta potties, that they had one that was accessible in the Zimmerman playground. And that's something that we hadn't discussed before, having, Marty Mayer, Morse seemed amenable to porta potties, but we never talked about having one that's accessible. And I think that that's interesting. I'm always concerned about ADA issues, and it was something I hadn't thought about. But clearly, as I mentioned, it was CB8 that has this Parks Resource Guide that they update every year. I don't know if anyone has any interest in doing anything like that. I don't know the value of it, given that there's so much information out there already. It seemed that some of these committees were a little more proactive than we are with dealing with projects and getting involved in the community. So maybe the Trees New York, if we pursue that a bit, might be something that we could pursue. Also, just a reminder that as the weather starts getting better, not this, like maybe last weekend or coming up, if you want to go visit your playground or park in the near future and see how things are going there. So, so we have two members who are not here this evening to give their reports. But I think, you know, it might not be a bad idea to do a little more. Did anyone else feel the earth shake a bit there for a second? Okay, all right, so it wasn't an earthquake, all right. But so I think, you know, we should think about this a little more and continue this discussion going forward. So I will then, unless anyone has anything else they want to contribute at this point.
I was just gonna update on the Friends group for Susan Smith McKinney Bridge Park. Is that what you're?
No, I was talking about the subject of the other
Okay,
community
gotcha.
boards. Okay, but we'll jump to you in just a minute.
Sure.
All right, well, we could talk about that as to other committee business before we get to community forum. So Suzanne, if you
Yes.
want to give us an update.
Yeah, so as I talked about, we had a really great intro meeting with community stakeholders last Monday. Hannah Basio and myself hosted. We had members from Dumbo Action Committee. We had someone from Brooklyn Bridge Parents. We had folks from PS 307, Dock Street Middle School, Latrell from Farragut Stakeholders. And we also have interest from Kat at the library as well. She was unable to attend. But the goal of the meeting was just to get everyone on board about what a Friends group is. And once we get a more fine-tuned estimate from the Parks Department on the opening date,
Okay.
the tracker still says April, and, you know, I don't think like stuff is happening. So I'm sure it's,
Sure.
you know, it's close to April, but maybe it's May or maybe it's June. You know, once we have a more fine-tuned estimate, then we're going to set a community meeting, and we'll all reach out to our to members of our communities and get people to come to the meeting so that we can get people to raise their hands and say that they want to be involved in forming this group. But a lot of and Hannah from Partnership for Parks is going to help out with the flyer and communication and all of that as well. But a lot of, I would say, positive energy around having a Friends group about this park being really a neighborhood park. I mean, we do have a lot of parks in the area, but when you sort of think about like Brooklyn Bridge Park, I would not call that a neighborhood community park. So a lot of enthusiasm around it being a neighborhood park, and the way that the communities can come together in that park. So yeah, good things overall, and I'll keep you posted. And of course, when we set the larger meeting for the full community, everyone's invited to come in and participate in here as well.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it's exciting.
So I wanted to thank you for, I wanted to backtrack for a moment. Oh. They've heard about it. The bike polo folks.
Portion called. Okay, I don't know if I understand that, Taya, but maybe we can chat offline.
Oh, I'm muted. I'm so sorry.
Oh, okay.
They were interested in contributing time, energy, labor, enthusiasm, outreach, because they are particularly interested in this little corner.
Oh, I have to recall if when you look on the tracker where it has the design plan, if that little corner is part of the
Right.
You know, what's being done.
I think they've done a fair amount of research, and they've also looked into usage, and their thinking is that it may be an underutilized portion of the park that no one would really miss if it were transitioned into multi-use hard court. So I can connect you to them offline.
No, but before you do that, we should look at the design and see if what it looks like today is.
Both.
Because the Friends group is going to be for for the part that's being redone. And I wonder if this is just really technically a separate little area,
It's
you know?
this little hardcourt area.
Yeah, I'm so bad visually, to be completely honest with you. I have to see
There-
it
there's
in
the bridge.
context with the rest of the park. So
I'm happy to connect with you about this offline.
Okay,
It
sounds
was
good.
just, it's another little subset that might be interested in contributing.
yeah, okay, sounds good.
Well, I was just thinking, maybe to follow up on what Richard said, maybe we could link on our website to some of these parks that are named for women.
Yes,
because
there's
they'll have
definitely-
information and, for March. Or something of that sort. I mean, I don't know who Maricha Lyons is, for example. So, Andrew, yeah.
Yeah, just talking about those names, and I apologize, I probably missed it, maybe because I missed a meeting or two. But I've never heard those parks named the way they are presently named and the way we're talking about. And I was just wondering, when did that come about? Because I know that was always Bridge Park 2, and the other one was like a Bridge Park 3 or something that absolutely inaccessible to anybody.
Mhm,
And yet now I see them being named, which is great. But I
mhm.
don't know how it
Yeah.
happened and who these people are that they're named after.
It was like a year, I want to say it was probably around June 2020, and there was the Parks Department put out a press release on it. We'd have to Google when it was, but I know for sure they put out a press release because I remember I posted it in our neighborhood group and it was one of the most liked posts we ever had.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I know years ago when we had to name something in a park, even a portion of a park, it had to have community participation, almost meetings, and all of a sudden here is the Parks Department comes out with a press release. This is what it's called from here on in. And that's kind of a little bit of a shocker that maybe it's good. It probably is good, but I didn't hear about it ever. I'm not saying I'm supposed to hear about it, but I don't think we ever discussed it. For both parks, for both Bridge Park 2 and the other one that's kind of very inaccessible to anybody. But they are now named for somebody.
Mhm.
Well, I think that's better than just calling it.
Oh,
Bridge
yes,
Park
I
2
agree.
or 3,
I fully agree. It's nice to have it, but is there a little history to it? Should we know more about them?
Well, I think if you go online, because,
Taya posted the link.
yeah, if, so,
Yeah, and it's like across the different boroughs.
It's like, I've walked through Squib Park and any number of times, especially since the bridge is there. And then if you read the plaque as to
Mhm.
who it's named after,
Yeah.
it's Squib. So it's Squib Drugs, which I don't think is around anymore, but
Mm.
so.
Yeah. But I think one of the things the Friends group might want to do is bring the history to bring the name to life and
Yeah.
tying into the other conversations, having, doing something during Women's History Month to talk about, the contributions of women in the area and the contributions of Susan Smith McKinney, who was like the first physician or something medical.
Right, that's what it said, the first female Black physician in New York State.
Yeah.
So certainly something to recognize. All
Mhm.
right, so what I'd like people to do going forward is to think some more about clearly environment and culture seem to be subjects that pop up that are related to parks, and think about what, if we were going to make a recommendation to the board, what you think would be appropriate for our committee to spend some more time, to get involved in. I think there would be support for putting culture in with the Parks and Recreation, and we'd have to talk more about the environment and resiliency, because I think Hess feels very invested in those at this point in time. But it certainly, it's a start. And I'm going to turn this over to Community Forum to see. I know we had a number of people. We still have a few from outside the committee. Does anyone want to bring up any subject for discussion? Is there anyone who's not a committee member who has something for us to discuss tonight or wants to share?
I'd like to go back a little bit, maybe.
Lenny, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, we haven't discussed the idea of University Place Dog Park in a while.
Well, I think
And-
maybe we should hold that to the next meeting. There might be
Okay.
some developments on that.
Is there anything you can clue me in on?
No, I just, for the moment, I think we should discuss that next time. And as I said, I don't know if other people found this, but I certainly found it, that this is a big issue all over the city, dog runs. I was looking at other community boards. So I think there's going to be more and more support for dog runs. And I think we've already seen it a bit, that the parks is realizing that this is a significant issue for a lot of people. And I think it was heightened during the height of the pandemic,
Mhm.
as more people were getting more animals. And I think it makes much more sense to have a dedicated dog run than, people just create them, so to speak. A lot of people just hang out in a certain area and with their dogs.
Well,
It's not
you're taking
formalized.
up a lot of my argument right there.
Okay.
Mhm,
That's a
mhm.
lot of my argument.
Oh, all right. Well, I've been listening.
Well, I
So,
want to call everyone's attention to what Taya sent out earlier today about this District 35 Dog Runs 101 meeting on March 22nd. It's in our email. Because it sounds like Crystal, Councilman Hudson, Crystal is getting behind this and having this information session, and CB2 is co-developing.
I don't know that we're ready to talk about it, Suzanne, but thank you
Okay.
for mentioning it. Okay, I think Taya would like us to hold off on that.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, and so, all right, Richard, we're gonna give you 2 minutes.
Only two?
Yes, because you already had about 5.
I'm here. All right. My name is Richard Mara. I'm the captain for the New York City Park Stewardship Program for the North Heights, Fulton Landing, Dumbo, Vinegar Hill, and Farragut Housing, as well as a licensed citizen pruner. I want to thank you for having Nelson here. It's an incredible program. The Park
Really is.
Department Stewardship Program is always looking to develop new stewards. If you would like more information about becoming a steward or want help in getting a project going in your neighborhood, please go out to our website and information on the program. I'm not too good at the computer, but I have it here. I'll try to put it in there. Taya, it's the New York City Parks.org.reg stewardship. At any rate, Trees New York, you heard our programs, it's just an amazing opportunity to realize that your parks committee is the whole city. It's not just a little isolated section of the city, but everything, every tree in the city, every bush in the city is a park. So I want to hope that you'll realize that and use New York City Trees New York to help that. The last time I was here, I talked about and sang about autumn leaves
All right.
and the role they play in feeding and nourishing trees during the winter season. Tonight, I wanted to speak about how trees survive the winter months. The broadleaf trees are now standing bare without their leaves, and they look fairly lifeless, but appearances can be surprisingly deceptive. The aspen has striking white bark, but that of the younger trees tends to have a greenish tinge thanks to the chlorophylls buried in the inner layer. When sunlight penetrates the thin outer layer, it becomes enough for the photosynthesis. Aided by tiny pores in the bark that let carbon dioxide and oxygen gases pass in and out. And so even in winter, the trees can supplement its food resources. Sunlight can also penetrate through the thin layer bark of beech and silver birch. For the bark, the tender saplings of other trees where there is enough chlorophyll for photosynthesis. Trees such as silver birch have bark that also peels away and may let more light in. But even in the thicker bark of other trees, light can still penetrate through the cracks, whether the bark is craggy or smooth. And the leaf buds and the twigs of many trees can also make food by photosynthesis, even if only for a week or two before the buds open. A welcome boost just as spring is getting going. So when you look at a tree, whether you're in the park or on the street, look at the bark. The bark is telling you something. These trees are alive. They are beings. They're helping us. We must realize the value. And that's why Trees New York, mulching, helping them survive, giving them life, keeping them alive, will keep us alive too. Thank you. And good night. And thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you. All right, anyone else want to speak in community forum? I noticed that Taya has hearts on her mind quite a bit this evening. So in recognition of that, unless there's anything else, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. So if anyone wants to celebrate Valentine's evening, they can do so. Or go to another meeting, we were trying to set up meetings for Saturday, and I could not believe, I thought I'm an overbooked person, but other people are even more overbooked. Everyone had meetings all day Saturday. It was hard to do that. Anyway, so we wound up meeting at 5 o'clock on Saturday. At any rate, I saw Suzanne raise her hand. Was that a motion to adjourn?
It was.
And is there a second? Okay, all right. It looks like everyone is in favor of that. So I wish you a happy Valentine's Day, and I will see you again in March. Now, March, we're on our regular third Monday of the month. It's when we get back to April that we're meeting early again. So anyway, I thank you for doing this work. I really appreciate it. And I found it very interesting. I hope you did, and to be continued. So have a good evening.
Thank you, Barbara.
And thank you.
Bye.
You-
Bye-bye.